Instead of forcing a rear overhand, we're going to build it in step by step through repeatable patterns. So I'm going to go ahead and start in bladed high. And for reference, there are 4 states. We have bladed high, bladed low, square high, and square low. And states don't move, actions do. So I'm going to move in 45, and an in 45 is when I move my head and weight from my rear foot to my lead foot diagonally 45 degrees, while my shoulders and hips rotate into squared low. Next, I'm going to throw this lead hook to the body, then rear straight. Now let's see how that looks on the heavy bag. Note I'm in bladed high, then square low, lead hook to the body, rear straight. All right, now let's put some context to this. Let's say my opponent threw his jab and I move in 45. Then on the second beat, I'm going to throw this lead hook to the body. Now, if my opponent turned over his punch, which I would call a lead cross, his head and weight would end up over his rear foot. Whereas if he folded it out, then his head and weight would end up over his lead foot. And that matters to my opponent. If he ended over his lead foot, he would need to bob down to get under this rear straight. And a bob is just a waist bend over your lead foot, versus if he ended up over his rear foot, he would need to drop, which is a waist bend over his rear foot. So let's check out one more angle. On this first beat, we have the in 45, lead hook to the body, rear straight. Okay, let's start back in bladed high. I'm going to move in 45, putting me in square low. Once again, this lead hook to the body. Now here we're going to change up the pattern a bit. I'm going to throw a lead hook to the head, putting me back in bladed high, then follow up with a rear straight, putting me in square high. Now, just like before, when I see how that looks on the heavy bag, note my head's in bladed high, then it's square low, lead hook to the body, then head, then rear straight. And a quick note, if you noticed, I whiffed on that hook to the head. And remember, that's okay. We're going to sail punches in sparring. And that's important so you know how to catch your weight. Okay, again, let's put some context to this. Say my opponent threw that jab and I moved in 45. Second beat, I'm going to throw that lead hook to the body. And same as before, if my opponent turned over his punch, his head and weight would end up over that rear foot, versus if he threw out a jab or folded it out rather, then his head and weight would end up over that lead foot. And that matters to him. If he ended up over his lead foot, he could catch that hook to the body, then bob down under the hook to the head, then weave out, getting under the rear straight. Whereas if he ended up over his rear foot, he could catch that hook to the body, then drop, getting under the hook to the head, and then weave in, getting under the rear straight. So let's check out one last angle. On the first beat, we have the in 45. The second is the lead hook to the body. The third is the hook to the head. Notice the whiff. The fourth is the rear straight. Okay, we got one more. This is where the overhand comes into play. I'm in bladed high. I'm going to move in 45, putting me in square low. This time, I'm going to weave out to bladed low so I could go ahead and throw this rear overhand, putting me back into square low. Then a lead hook puts me in bladed high. So on the heavy bag, it's bladed high, square low, bladed low, rear overhand, lead hook. And before, our opponent's going to go ahead and throw that jab, and this is what we've been setting up. They're thinking lead hook to the body right here, but instead we're going to weave out and throw that rear overhand, lead hook. And here's one last angle. On the first beat, we have that in 45, weave out on the second, overhand on the third, lead hook to the head on the fourth.